Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tabletop. A few weeks ago, we had someone come on and talk about the joy of crunch in the games. Love to play by the rules, play constrained by them, because that allows you to play a game to its full extent. And we had a lot of people reacting that they really loved that philosophy. So I went out and I have found maybe the other side of the spectrum when playing TTRPGs. Returning to Tabletop, we have friend of the pod, Lex. How are you, Lex?
Hi, I'm doing great. Yeah, my name's Lex. My pronouns are they, them. Just longtime friend of Nick and the podcast. And I'm excited to be back and talking with everybody about kind of the other side of the coin.
Yeah, so Lex and I randomly, by the way, very cool twist of fate, ended up at the same party in the same city. And we actually met in person and we were talking about this kind of topic. And Lex, you were saying that you think that people should play TTRPGs like they are doing an actual play by kind of putting that amount of effort into sort of, the theatricality and the storytelling parts of the game, and maybe be a little bit more flexible with other parts of a TTRPG experience. So I want to turn it over to you to get your thesis out. How do you feel about this and why do you feel that way?
So that's a really great question. So I think a lot of it comes from having played at home tables where almost like the ground rules aren't established, and in a weird way. I know that there's a conversation around following the rules of the story and kind of wanting to stick to the book as much as possible. But I think when you have a table where a lot of the people want to follow that, and then you as a player are like, well, I don't feel emotionally invested in this kind of a story. I really want to be in it and really dig into the theatrics of it, really be able to sit at a table and feel like you're a stupid little dude and not have the entire table look at you like you're insane for wanting to role play in a weird way. It just adds a lot of joy in my life. And then the other side of it too, and the real big reason why I feel like everybody should kind of play like an actual play, is actual plays follow a lot of safety measurements when they're putting together recording tables. And it's something that I think is missing from home tables. Not all home tables. I've been a part of home tables where it's kind of an overlap of recorders, people who record and people who don't. And you tend to get kind of a nice medium on the safety rules stuff. But like, I've been talking to some people who only play home games. And when you mention doing a session 0, or even just a checklist, like the consent checklist that a lot of TTRPGers in like the actual play space will do, they can be a little surprised by that, where they're like, oh, I never thought about something like that. That's a completely new concept. And so that to me puts me immediately on guard when I'm looking at being at a table that's mostly non-actual play people, because I'm like, well, I don't know where we all stand. Some of us as human beings are going to be, nice and not want to bring in really touchy subjects. But there are some triggering things that can come up in TTRPGs that might catch some other people off guard. Myself, I am profoundly scared of spiders. I'm fine with spiders being in the game, but when people start sending images of spiders in the chat, or if they have little minis with spiders, I'm like, dear God, no, please, dear God, no. And without having that conversation, my GM, my table mates won't know that. And when you have that level of trust and that level of safety, it can make it a lot more fun to then be like, all right, now I'm comfortable. Now I know where the lines are and where I can go crazy and where I need to hold back. And so on the play side, that's what I really like. And I have my own my other opinions about the rule of cool as well.
Yeah.
if we wanted to get into something like that.
Well, yeah, let's start there. So, yeah, I think that that's a good reason to kind of set out, or a couple good reasons. One being like, yes, I would say that within a lot of games, there are some, but they're not. I don't think there is in D&D. Oh gosh, man, Shade's gonna beat me up if if I get that wrong. Maybe in the new rules, I'm not sure about the old ones, but they don't have like a set list of like safety rules, or sort of like you said, like a guide to a session zero, stuff like that.
No, I can tell you they
Which,
definitely don't. And that I
okay,
think
great.
is I think that's a really big downside. Like when you're new to the TTRPG world in any capacity,
Hmm.
I think that's something that needs to be more of a conversation. And I know that that is a big conversation in the AP world.
Yeah, because then it also allows you to, like you said, be really like to sink very far into some very specific types of circumstances without feeling like you're crossing any lines or whatever. You can really, play act the drama that comes up, or the humor that comes up in these sessions. And so one question I want to ask you though is, so whereas when I was talking with Derek, the person who came on to talk about sort of crunch, the thing that they said that they loved about really like working within a rule set, and to kind of feel more confined by like a preset of rules, is that it allows you to really make the best story within a structure, essentially. And so what do you think that allowing people to play more like an actual play, and by the way, I think that this sort of means, focusing on story, focusing on the scene work, focusing on a lot of the storytelling aspects, and less of the game mechanics. Like that allows you to explore a different type of game. But in your sense, what is the thing that you really get out of this that makes you be like, this is the way to play?
What I really get out of it is you then can create a character that has more to them than just what is written.
Hmm.
So, for example, you know, playing a character that D&D is a great example of this because they don't have a mechanic built in. And I think that this is something that I wish was built in because it'd be cool to see how this would work. But we as people change through our lives and we can start in one career and change fields. What's to say the wizard decided to go to the gym and stop doing wizardry altogether?
Yeah.
What's to say they stopped doing that? They were a level 10, a level 12 wizard, and they were like, you know what, screw that. I'm going to be a monk.
Yeah.
You know? Why are we then confined to, okay, they can only get to level 10 or 8, or they can only get to level 8 or 10 in monk because they're multi-classing now.
Yeah.
Why can't they then just drop levels in
Right.
wizardry to do that? And that's just not a mechanic that's built in for a lot of plays, a lot of games at a home table that would be approachable for somebody that isn't open-minded to that kind of idea. So I think it allows for a lot of versatility with the characters.
Hmm.
And a lot of people like to have really intense backstories in D&D. And it's when I've read some backstories, I get I'm just like, how do you have this really deep backstory, but you're only like a level 2 rogue?
Yeah. The
Like
classic thing
what?
of like, you're level 1, you can't have already been named a dragon hunter or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm like, so you're going really hard. So in that point, I kind of go, well, what were you before you became this class or this thing? And what are you that makes you think this way?
Hmm.
And really digging into the story beats of a character at their heart,
Yeah.
versus going, I'm going to be a rogue. I'm going to fit the rogue mold and I'm going to do the rogue thing, which is totally fine. Don't get me wrong. I've played rogues that it's fun to just be like, I am a sultry man standing in the corner and I like picking locks and stealing things. But when you're trying to build this kind of immersive world where you can laugh with your players and you can really have those deep emotional moments where people are like, holy shit, there's something here. it's kind of hard to do that when you follow really strict guidelines of it's A to B to C, because that's not how life is. Everybody's lives are different and they don't follow the same path. And I mean, I've thought about it too in the sense of like being a queer person,
Mhm.
where you might think following the rules is going to be the easiest path, and then you realize, oh wait, following the rules makes me sad.
Yeah, it is. It is like, I really love sort of what you're saying about how because at first I was like, yeah, I guess it really does provide you a lot of flexibility in your story, or your what can happen during a session, because you're not constraining yourself to any specific thing. And I have always GM'd with a lot of like improv tenets. Like, a lot of my prep books are kind of incomprehensible, because it's like a couple of stat lines and like a weird, shape of a lock or something that I drew on the fly to be
No,
like,
I
this is what you
come.
see.
That's literally
um,
that's how I GM. I'm like, I see other GM notes where they're like, it's going to be a DC whatever
yeah,
for this, DC for that, and I'm like, would you roll 18? Yeah, you open it. That sounds
yeah,
about
that sounds
right.
good. That's
Yeah,
hitting right in my brain.
that's hitting
Yeah,
right
no,
in my
I
brain for your level 5 party on this
yeah.
easy lock. If you are a level 20 party, an 18, and this is like the big lock in the story, no, an 18 is not going to cut it. Doesn't scratch the right part of my brain yet.
Yeah. And it's also really interesting where these philosophies collide, because one thing that I think a lot of people who like very crunchy systems like about that is that they can really make what feels like a unique feeling character, because it's not always going to be, whatever it is. It's usually going to, I would argue that it also pens people into specific types of characters, because there's an optimal way to progress through things. But I would
Mhm.
say that it allowed like a Pathfinder with their feat sort of system, where you're kind of constantly mixing and matching feats rather than like classes or something. Like, that is like an attempt to get to a really flexible storytelling and character creation moment, where you can feel like, yes, like I am a wizard who has decided to use muscle magic, and so I'm going to shed my academic life and now go into becoming a gym rat, and then figure out how to do that with these feats. So like, on their side, that's what gives them a lot of enjoyment. But what I'm hearing is the same thing from you as well, where it's like, this allows me to create whatever I want and tell whatever kind of story I want, and really feel like I have people who will go along with that and treat this the same way, even though it maybe not is not prescribed within any of the rules, which I really
Yeah.
resonate with too. And I think it's yeah, for me, it's really interesting how people take like kind of, the opposite sides, and I'm using air quotes
Yeah.
because, this is not, no one I think feels super passionately about this, but like, there is sort of a dichotomy between the two ways of playing, and people are very often like, you shall not pass the line. But like, I've seen a lot of parties really clump up around that preference. So it's really funny that it's like, part of it is chasing that same freedom feeling.
Yeah, and I mean, I can, and I agree, there is something to be said about some degree of crunch. I remember I made a character that I really want to go back to at some point. It's a warlock that thinks that they're a paladin,
Hmm.
and so presents as a paladin to everybody else, thinks that they're a paladin deep in their heart, but they made a vow at some point to get revenge, but it was really an agreement to an entity that they weren't aware of.
Yeah.
And the crunch that really came from that for me was the fact that I had to then be like, all right, what can translate like pretty close one to one, and how do I interact with this group around me
Yeah.
who is going to be very, gung ho with all the rules and very lackadaisical with it, where I'm like, oh no, I have to follow things very strictly here in order to
Yeah.
make what I'm trying to develop into something realistic. But I ended up just happenstance after moving couldn't continue that story, which was frustrating. But
Yeah.
it's a character that I want to get back to, because it does, I think for me, it mixed a little bit of like what I like about the AP world of, you can do whatever the hell you want.
Hmm.
Guess what? It's a made up game, you know? As long as the GM says go for it, do it.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit of a mix of that, plus like the mechanics side of things, being like, I have to follow, I can't really make an argument on warlock side of stuff because it impacts how people will view the character as a paladin. So
Yeah.
I have to follow things very strictly to be able to get a 1-to-1 or as close to 1-to-1 as possible. So like I can see the merit of going very crunchy on the rules to try and like, you know, create a character that's unique and different. And it makes it really hard. It does. But some people like the security of going, I can pinpoint a thing in the text that says to do this.
Yeah.
I don't, some of this comes from like, I have a history of concussions. And so reading for a while was hard.
Yeah.
But like, I don't want to read that much when I'm trying to create a character. I want to Google, is this already a thing? No? Cool. I'm going to make it a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so much comes from that same sort of impulse that ends up creating homebrew worlds within established systems. Like not most people do not play in Faerun. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of doing something else. Yeah, and I think that's such a good point. And I really love what you said about it because it's sort of an accessibility argument as well. And I think that is something that Franco always talks about as, you know, this game, this hobby that we all really like is just folk storytelling tradition. So there really isn't like a right or a wrong way to do it.
Yeah. No,
so
I mean,
yeah, so
that's a great way of
really,
looking at it.
yeah,
No,
right. And it kind of is like, this is a way that allows people who maybe aren't built in the same way of like either can't read, don't want to read a bunch of like really sometimes dense statistics and things like that. That makes a lot of sense to me. One thing that like,
go ahead,
sorry, keep going, Lex.
I mean, I was just going to say, it's like, it's also, you know, what is the one way that we all really learn to play these games? It's not by reading the books. It's by playing the game.
Yeah.
It's by rolling the dice. It's by, you know, doing the thing and seeing what sticks and what doesn't. And so while, especially when you're learning, it can be really comfortable to sit in the rules that you're learning. There's something to be said about about that first moment when you say, what if I try this? And the GM goes, let me think about how that would work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because then you're going, oh, wait, I can do anything. This isn't something that has to be written down. And and I really like what you said about it being a folklore style of storytelling, because all of our stories going back for generations, for millennia, have been just word of mouth and have changed over time. And so feeling that kind of camaraderie again of we're going to tell a story together and see what sticks and what we feel vibes well scratches an itch in my brain, at least, that I feel like is missing in a lot of modern day stuff. Not to say that computers, obviously we are meeting virtually. Computers are lovely and recordings are great. But when it comes to storytelling and the fantastical nature of it all, it's kind of nice to rely on memory a little bit. And memory is fallacious. Memory changes as you learn more information. As you get older, you forget things. Things get glossed over. You know, we all forget what happened at session 1 when we're at session 15 because it's been 5 years, because we only play once or twice every couple months. And there's something to be said about being like, you know what, let's just say that happened and go from there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that you said there that I want to touch on. Like you said, sort of the most important thing being a shared base reality, which I think goes back to what you were saying around expectations of the game and safety tools and all that kind of thing. I think that is the argument for doing any of those things, other than it makes your games a more pleasant place to be. Everyone's on the same page, but then also it does allow you to like accept a shared reality. And I think that you're right that rules behind what reality you accept is really sort of optional. You know what I mean? Like you kind of like, everyone's like, yep, that's the way it goes. Let's keep going. I think that is a great point. I also really love this idea of like the rules being part of the tradition of kind of morphing and changing as you play with a different group, and then that person, something gets adjudicated at a table that they go and maybe they GM something, and then that's the rule that they remember or whatever. So who says anything is super specific? But one thing I wanted to sort of ask you about, because this is one of the things that came up that I was like, oh yeah, like this is true, which is that rules or like crunch in games allows you to, as a GM, make faster decisions because there's a kind of preset level of reality, physics, whatever it is that they have tried to emulate in the rules, so that you just have like a quick yes no or like a quick sort of answer to when someone tries to be super creative or kind of push the abilities that they can use to the limit. So my question to you would be like, do you feel the sort of GM fatigue when you're GMing for a table that's more kind of like story or actual play driven, because like you're constantly also having to create on the fly with them, and as a GM you're usually under much more of a burden to do that successfully continuously because everyone else gets a break.
I mean, yes and no, because yes, I have played with some amazing players who they'll ask me something and I'm like, that sounds like a great idea. And then I have to build the table that goes with it,
Yeah.
And that's a lot of work. And then in the moment, they're like, well, what about this? And I'm like, no, there's so much to think about. I don't even know this random thing. I've dug myself a hole of too much freedom.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes there can be a lot of frustration in the, like, when do I set the line in when do I create the line between freedom to create and
Mm-hmm.
crunch for the rules?
Yeah.
And I've just had it. It's been very case to case, and it's it's a good question. It's a really good question. Well, because we just talked about it. Like, style of GMing for me is very on the fly to begin with.
Yeah.
And so I fully anticipate nothing from my players. The only time I get frustrated is when they're like, I want this one really specific thing, and then they don't do that one specific thing, because I'm like, I actually took time to plan this and you didn't do it. And then I'm like, I'm going to make you do it later when you don't want to,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I get more of the fatigue later, personally.
Mm.
I struggle more with balancing my real life with TTRPG life. And when I'm actually in the middle of it all, I don't feel like it's much, because I feel like when somebody asks that question, that's too much, where they're like, can I do this moderate thing that might break something, but isn't, earth shattering in this world? That's when I go, let me think about that, or let's put it to the table. What do we think collectively, knowing that this is setting a precedent for something?
Yeah.
Putting the weight on everybody at that table so that we're all collectively making a decision. I find that can help.
Mm-hmm.
And other times I go, ask me later, because that is not a now question. That is a down the road question, and I don't have an answer yet. But my struggle more so comes from when I get the millions of questions throughout the day, and if there isn't a good boundary between like when I can answer those questions or not.
Mm-hmm.
I've had tables where they would message me right when I start my work day and be frustrated if I didn't respond quickly.
Yeah.
But then I would forget what they said and I wouldn't put it in my notes later because I was at work. And then it'd be, well, why didn't you do this? And I'd be like, because I forgot.
Yeah, I do.
So, yeah.
The sort of freedom from being able to, play more theatrically or play more, I guess, improvisationally. Like the thing that does allow you to do is say, like, you don't have to worry about it being a hard no on something. You know what I mean? Like,
you don't.
Yeah, so they don't have to get permission, from the GM to do something or to feel or like build in a certain way or whatever.
It's more that it's just like, oh, well, if they want to do something that's different, if they feel like they need to ask about it, it's I feel like it tends to be met with more flexibility and more of a yes and or a no but sort of situation. The improv side of things where you're saying, you want to play this character that has a lot of abilities and can do a lot of things. Guess what? You're not going to have all of that at level 2 or right at the beginning of the story. Like, we'll build something that allows you to do this, but this also feeds into my firm belief that every player should start with a negative stat. And nobody should be able to be level 20 or be at like using D&D logic. Nobody should be at like a 20 in any skill when you're level 5, those are the only rules that I get pretty firm on, where I'm like, no, you really can't. Because I'm like, you as a person will grow. Your character should grow too. If you are maxed out on your skill when you are just a little hometown hero, where's the evolution? Where's the development coming in down the road? Those are the only rules that I'm like, no, you gotta be you gotta have a negative stat. You can't be maxed out. But otherwise I'm like, it's collaborative,
Yeah.
We all need to collectively agree upon what the social rules are going to be here.
Yeah. And that's what in my opinion, one of the reasons why I tend to sort of play on the spectrum more towards this end is that I think it allows the collaborative way of storytelling, and also by creating a game dynamic in which everyone is contributing constantly to kind of everything, means that everyone has bought into the project that is this game a little more. And it kind of goes to what you're talking about, because then everyone's like, oh, I actually really care about this turn that's not my own, or whatever it is. And I think that is
people engaged.
Yeah, and I think it just allows people to really invest in other people at the table, allows them to, because it's not simply like a set thing that they are looking at, that they are then trying to choose between specific things that allow them to be the most optimal to their fellows. So that is, I think, like a really good way to describe why it's a fun way to play. So yeah, and I think that the GM decision fatigue stuff, like I do the same thing where I just say like, what does everyone else think? Like, does this feel good for the world? Or I'll be like, yes, but I can do that too. And then if they're like, oh, no, that's okay. Then I'm like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you know what? If you're going to make this precedent, I want you to understand, like, it's informed consent. I work in healthcare. Informed consent is really important. And some of that is knowing the downsides of your decision. And if you're going to request that, I don't know, this one staff can grant wishes. If you lose that staff, it means somebody else can get those wishes. And who's to say that isn't, I don't know, some horrible dragon. I don't know. Or just anything, anything the thing I like the most about being collaborative in this way is that, like you said, people get invested, but it also means that whatever they throw at you, because they're going to throw everything at you. You can throw right back. They're adding just as much as you are. And it just means that you can, I feel like it makes it more, all in all, it makes it more collaborative, and provides a lot of joy in the game and away from D&D, because there's a million different TTRPGs.
I would say it also kind of preserves a little bit of the discovery process. You know how like moments of discovery are like delightful, just kind of across the board. It's like why people like to do puzzles and stuff. But like that moment of discovery, you can kind of find that fresh throughout a campaign, because there's no rule set that's like yes or no, and that's pre-informed knowledge. Like people are able to discover like, oh, what if I used this way and did this? That's like
Exactly.
dopamine shot straight into the veins.
Yeah. And it makes it gives you that moment of discovery. It gives you that aha. And then it forces a lot of people to think critically about what they're doing in that moment versus going, Pokemon style. I always know the formula to beat my opponent. I've got the type chart in my head. I've got it down pat. I don't always have a perfectly balanced team.
I
always pick
Whip,
the
then
same.
Hypnotize, then Thunderbolt, and then I've won.
Yep. Exactly.
Something like that. Yeah.
And like you're like, I don't care which generation it is, which type of campaign I'm running or whatever. I always have a balanced group. I know exactly what I'm doing and we have it down pat. And then you throw that group for a loop with something different that isn't in the rule book, something that you make up, something that's completely different and is completely new. And it allows them to go, oh shit, wait, what do we do now? It gives people a second to actually realize that there's more to it. And there can be a lot of joy that comes in that moment. And then also a lot of sorrow. As much as we've talked about the joy that can come with this side, it also allows, back to the storytelling side of all of this, it allows for moments of really heart-wrenching just sadness in a very nice way. We're all physically safe sitting at the table. That's all good.
Yeah.
But when you realize that offhanded comment you made or that, decision you made that was a little bit funky and the GM had to make a call on whether or not that'd be allowed, when you realize that choice held a lot more weight than you thought, and maybe the GM didn't even realize it until later, but when you finally realize the weight that you were carrying with that decision, those are the stories that people are going to talk about. Those are the stories that your friends are going to reference years later. That and the funny stuff. Don't get me wrong on that. Somebody making a stupid joke, they're always going to laugh about it. I had a ferret that had a BDSM like harness.
Yeah.
Like, a campaign. And that's still a joke with my friends. But that moment of just like, it doesn't even have to be big, but just going, my character made this choice and they misunderstood it. Everyone else thought that no one else realized it until later. And that moment when you're not following the rules, but you're following a logic that makes sense for this world.
Yeah.
It allows for more than just the typical, like, I was an orphan and I grew up on the streets sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it adds a lot of depth. And I love that shit.
I also think that with a very crunchy table, there is a way that you can play to mitigate ever having to feel that sort of way. Because you can say like, I'm only at like 5 HP. I'm ready to go. Like we're going to go back to the inn and we're going to sleep.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. But like with a game like this, it's much more about like kind of plumbing that to like not let a system prevent you from having a really good story, essentially.
Yeah.
Which I think is great. So one more question I have that I want your response to, and then I think we can kind of do like final thoughts and all that.
Cool.
But one thing is that at a table, it's a game. People come after work. They're tired. An actual play environment kind of requires everyone to kind of be on. You know what I mean? Like everyone has to be switched on. And like, it's not even just like I have to be on 5 minutes every 20 minutes or whatever. It's like I'm constantly needing to be focused. How do you feel about that? Like a lot of people use these games sort of, let's get a bunch of pizza, let's sit down and let's like, you kind of, you're playing Yahtzee essentially. So I want to get your pitch on the other side.
So that would be when I'm saying that would be when I say, hey, this isn't an actual play. You're going to be tired. You're good. Like, we're
Yeah.
not recording this. And remember, mistakes are fine. Just like in
Yeah.
an actual play, because you can, if you make a mistake that if you're at a table and your GM doesn't let you run back a horrifying mistake that you didn't understand, as long as it was within, a few minutes,
Yeah.
that's questionable, in my opinion. But basically, like, you're going to be tired. You're not going to be on. I think, honestly, playing like an actual play, what I mean by it is just more the vibes of everybody being there to have a good time.
Yeah.
And half of having a good time is forgetting about the rules of our lives in a way.
Yeah.
We all go to work where we have to subscribe to certain rules and certain requirements, and we have to be on. I mean, I don't know about everybody, but I mentioned I work in the medical field in my real world life, and I work with people face to face all day. And I'm, like you said, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I get so tired at the end of the day. But then sometimes I'm like, oh, wait, I get a recording because
Yeah.
I get to switch the hat and I get to take off the kind of stodgy, stuck up, like, I'm professional and I'm going to do the thing, and be like, I get to be a silly, goofy thing.
Yeah.
I get to have fun. I get to swear and not have to apologize for it. That would be my perspective on it, is just get the pizza.
Yeah.
But also put the books away. You don't need the rule books all the time.
Yeah.
Just put it down. In fact, play like an actual play, just in vibes,
Yeah.
Yes, and the shit out of it. If you didn't session prep, fine. The general gist. Tell them that you have a plan and then let them make it for you. Or if you're a player, look at your GM and go, I have no idea. I don't know what I want to do, but I know I need I know my character needs a sword.
Mm-hmm.
Cool, shopping episode. Done.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I think that, like you say, it's I bringing the right vibes to a table is something I've been thinking about a lot, because I was thinking to myself, how on earth is it that every table I sit down at feels so different playing these games? You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I sit down and I'm like, what is this? People do this for fun? And then I'm like, wait, no, I do this for fun.
I know.
So it's kind of like, what is happening? So I totally, I agree that the thing is like, and something that I'm going to place this upon Derek. Derek, if you're listening, you can holler at me and see if you agree. But I think that part of too the idea behind being someone who's like, I want to play by the rules, I want this like kind of crunch aspect of the game. Part of that too is just like bringing a shared understanding to it, like bringing the vibes of that to a table and being like, we're all on the same page, right? All going back to that, So yeah, it's like that.
It's all about being on the same page with the table, no matter what. And some of that is being like, oh, we're all cool with a horror game, like something scary. Sometimes it's about the consent stuff. And other times it's, hey, we're going to follow the rules. I don't know personally what a game like that really feels like, because I don't want that personally, but to each their own. I've literally been deterred from playing games because somebody, like, I've had a friend be like, you don't want to play it. It's too much crunch. You're going to hate it. And I'm like, cool. No. And then other games that I'm like, I will eat this for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because it is just, you can do whatever you want. And it's all about making sure that everybody at that table agrees with that mentality. And that doesn't have anything to do with experience. I feel like this can come across as like, oh, if you're new to this and you want to be in the rules area to understand it, like, you can't improv your way through it. No, like, you absolutely can go into a campaign, even a one shot, and know practically nothing about the game. And you can yes and your way through it, as long as you're willing to fumble.
Yeah.
I think that's where I really love it, is just the idea that you can mess up, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's not going to break the world.
Yeah.
And as long as everybody at the table is having a good time, who cares?
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that is something that, like I said, I think all these different ways of playing, you're trying to get to the same goal, which is that everybody is just having a fun time
Yeah.
telling stories with friends. I think that that what draws me to this argument is that I think that at its highest self, at its evolved level, what D&D and these games allow you to do is sort of play act and try on different things to allow yourself the freedom to explore parts of yourself that you really aren't allowed
Yeah.
to, like you said, like at work, there's a very specific way you have to dress sometimes and the way you talk, and like there's a lot of rules, and this allows you to really expand and explore yourself, which I think is
Well,
like so great. And I think that playing like an actual play really just puts that part of it at the forefront. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, and there's so many stories. I mentioned, the overlap of like the queer world with TTRPGs a little bit. And, there's so many stories of people finding things out about themselves, be it gender or sexuality wise, through storytelling like
Yeah.
this. And being like, if I play this character, it doesn't mean that I like this stuff. And then a couple months later, they're like, I do like this stuff.
Yeah.
This does sound right. Um,
This actually feels pretty right for me.
yeah, and I think the reason at the end of the day, it's all just that we go through our lives confined by rules all the time, where we're told how to be and how to act, what the expectations are. That for me, it's nice when I get to play a game where the expectations are just to have fun.
Yeah.
In whatever way that looks.
Yeah. What a great place. I think it kind of like, what a great place to leave it, I think.
Yeah.
Lex, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this with me. What are you up to? Where can people find you? Do you want people to find you? Are you in hiding?
I'm not in hiding. I've been on like a mini hiatus, not in a like any bad way. I'm at Lex Get Pizza anywhere on socials. But I'm not currently in any big projects or any things. I've got things in the works that are coming out down the road that I'm happy to talk about off air because they're a little bit secret. But
Mm-hmm.
I've been over on Streaming Rainbow quite a bit. They stream on YouTube and Twitch. So I've been on there for some of their stuff recently. I'm occasionally over on Game Master Monday. Those are kind of my homes right now. But yeah, I'm around. I'm here.
Amazing. Everyone should give Lex a follow. They're a really good follow on whatever social media of choice you use.
When I choose to go back on the internet, that is. I forget.
To go back.
I just forget to do things on my social medias, and then I'm suddenly like, oh yeah.
Oh,
I should do this if I actually want to be part of stuff again.
Yeah, totally. I feel that every single day. I'm like, oh man, I wish I could delete everything. I'm like, but I need to keep it for the stupid hobbies I have.
Just keep running into random people at parties, Nick. And,
yes.
It works. People that you haven't talked to in a couple of years. It's all good.
I think everyone should. This is straight from Lex's mouth. Everyone, go to some parties. Maybe you'll run into an old friend. And maybe you'll make some new ones there too. So
there you go.
So thanks for coming on, Lex. And we'll definitely have you back on again, especially if you have some secret stuff coming out. So we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you later.
And everyone, if you want to hear more Tabletopped, we are going to be sticking with this once every other week schedule. Yes, I know it is 50% less tabletop, but let me tell you that 50% is going to be way higher quality because I feel rested and relaxed, and it's going to be great. So we're going to continue on that way. So in 2 weeks, you can check out your feed here, subscribe, and if you want to, get involved in another way, go to our website, tabletopod.com. You can send in a contact us form. We read all of them. So send us anything you want to know about the show or any topics you want us to discuss. All right, Lex, we'll see you next time.
Next time it is.
Goodbye.